If you have few or no friends, let me tell you something no one has the courage to say to your face. It is not always because you are awkward, not because you are boring, not because you don't try hard enough. Sometimes it's because you are dangerous in ways people can feel but cannot explain. Your silence makes them uncomfortable. Your detachment exposes their neediness. Your presence forces them to confront themselves. And most people don't want truth. They want comfort. So if your circle is small or non-existent, maybe it's not a weakness. Maybe you carry 5 rare traits that make ordinary minds uneasy. Let's see if you recognize yourself. You see through people too quickly. You see through people too quickly. It happens in seconds. Before they even finish their sentence, you already know what they want. You don't just hear words, you hear intention. You don't just see smiles. You see tension in the jaw, hesitation in the eyes, micro-expressions that betray insecurity. Most people live on the surface. You live underneath it. When someone compliments you, you can feel whether it is admiration or strategy. When someone offers help, you sense whether it is kindness or leverage. And that awareness changes everything. You notice how people adjust their tone depending on who is in the room. You notice who laughs too loud at powerful people as jokes. You notice who becomes silent when truth enters the conversation. You don't need proof. Patterns are enough. That is what makes others uneasy around you. They feel observed, measured, understood in ways they did not consent to. You rarely confront them directly. You don't need to. Your eyes do it for you. There is a certain stillness you carry, a quiet evaluation, and people sense it. They sense that their usual tactics won't work. Charm feels weak in front of you. Exaggeration feels transparent. Victim stories feel rehearsed. So they grow defensive. They might call you judgmental. They might accuse you of overthinking. They might say it not that deep. But it is that deep, because human behavior always is. You understand that most conversations are negotiations, status being tested, boundaries being probed, egos searching for validation, and you don't play along blindly. When someone tries subtle manipulation, you don't react emotionally. You observe. When someone tests your boundaries with a joke, you don't laugh automatically, you pause. That pause alone shifts power. People who rely on control through social pressure struggle with you. They cannot predict you. You don't overshare. You don't reveal your insecurities easily. You don't chase connection out of fear of losing it. You watch. And that makes people feel exposed. Because most friendships are built on mutual illusion. We pretend not to see each other as flaws. We pretend not to notice selfish motives. We pretend not to detect jealousy. You don't pretend. Not openly. Not internally. You see the envy in a compliment that sounds supportive. You see the competition hidden behind, just joking. You see the insecurity behind someone trying to dominate a room. And instead of reacting, you store it. That quiet memory of behavior. You remember who changes when status changes, who disappears when you succeed, who becomes warmer when they need something. Your mind collects data. Not out of paranoia, out of pattern recognition. You have learned that people reveal themselves in small moments, tiny cracks in their performance. And once you see it, you can unsee it. That is the burden. Because when you see through people too quickly, connection becomes complicated. You cannot fully relax around someone when you already understand their hidden agenda. You cannot fully admire someone when you see the insecurity driving them. You begin to crave depth. But depth is rare. Most people don't want to be understood at that level. They want to be liked. And you cannot truly like someone while ignoring what you clearly perceive. So you distance yourself, not dramatically, not angrily, quietly. You withdraw energy. You reduce access. You stop investing where authenticity is absent. And from the outside, it looks like you are antisocial. But the truth is colder than that. You are simply unwilling to participate in illusions you can already see through. You value silence over social approval. You value silence over social approval. That alone separates you from most people. Because most people are terrified of silence. They fill it with noise, with opinions they barely believe in, with laughter that feels forced, with agreement they don't mean, but you don't rush to speak. You don't feel the need to prove you belong in every room. You don't interrupt just to be seen. You don't compete for attention like it is oxygen. You are comfortable watching, comfortable thinking, comfortable letting others reveal themselves through their own need to be heard, and that restraint shifts power. When everyone is talking, you are observing. When everyone is reacting, you are analyzing. When everyone is performing, you are present. People mistake your silence for weakness at first. They assume you are shy, insecure, lacking confidence. So they test you. They speak over you. They try to dominate conversations. They look for validation in your reaction. But you don't react the way they expect. You don't rush to defend your position. You don't raise your voice to compete. You don't scramble to impress. You let them talk. You let them reveal their need, and slowly the dynamic shifts. Because silence forces others to confront themselves. When you don't laugh at their joke, they question its quality. When you don't instantly agree, they question their authority. When you don't seek approval, they question their importance. Your silence becomes a mirror, and most people hate mirrors. They prefer noise because noise hides insecurity. It creates distraction. It creates the illusion of confidence, but silence exposes who is truly comfortable in their own skin. You don't fear awkward pauses. You understand that discomfort is a tool. A pause in conversation makes the insecure speak more, makes the manipulator over-explain, makes the liar contradict themselves. You don't interrupt the process. You allow tension to breathe, and that patience intimidates people, because social approval is built on quick validation, a smile, a nod, a laugh, a reassuring word. You don't give it freely, not because you are cruel, but because you are selective. You understand that attention is currency. Every reaction you give is energy spent, so you spend it carefully. In group settings, you don't compete for the spotlight. You don't adjust your personality to fit the dominant voice. You don't shape your opinions to avoid conflict. If you speak, it is deliberate, measured, direct. And because you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you finally break your silence, people listen, not because you demanded it, but because you trained them to. There is something unsettling about someone who does crave validation. You don't check faces for approval after making a statement. You don't panic when your opinion creates tension. You don't soften your truth just to remain liked. And that independence disrupts social hierarchies, because hierarchies are maintained by approval, by clicks, by mutual reassurance, by silent agreements to protect each other's ego. You don't participate in that. If something is false, you don't clap for it. If something is shallow, you don't entertain it. If something is manipulative, you don't reward it with attention. So some people withdraw, not because you harmed them, but because you cannot be controlled through praise. You don't bend for applause. You don't chase inclusion. You would rather sit alone in silence than dilute yourself for company. And that choice makes you rare, because in a world addicted to attention, the person who does not seek it holds a different kind of power. 3. You refuse to perform for acceptance. You refuse to perform for acceptance. That is where the separation begins. Most people are actors. They adjust their tone depending on who is watching. They soften their opinions when authority enters the room. They exaggerate stories to appear more impressive. You don't. You don't inflate your success to earn admiration. You don't hide your strength to make others comfortable. You don't pretend to agree just to avoid tension. And that refusal unsettles people. Because performance is the foundation of social bonding. People trade masks. They exchange curated versions of themselves. They protect each other as illusions in silent agreement. You break that agreement. You show up the same way everywhere. No dramatic shift in personality. No desperate attempt to be the funniest, the smartest, the most liked. If they misunderstand you, you let them. If they misjudge you, you observe. You do not chase correction just to maintain image. That restraint feels like arrogance to those who live for approval. They are used to subtle submission, used to people laughing at jokes they don't find funny, used to others nodding even when they disagree, used to watching people shrink themselves to fit the dominant personality in the room. You don't shrink. You don't expand artificially either. You remain steady, and steadiness is intimidating. When someone tries to provoke you for attention, you don't give them a show. When someone tries to challenge you publicly to assert dominance, you don't de-escalate emotionally. You respond only if necessary. Calm, direct, minimal. That lack of performance disrupts social games, because games require participation. They require insecurity. They require the fear of exclusion. You are not afraid of exclusion. You've already made peace with standing alone. So when someone withdraws approval to test your reaction, you don to react. When someone distances themselves to see if you will chase, you don to chase. When someone withholds validation to measure your dependency, you remain unchanged. That silence sends a message. You cannot be manipulated through belonging. Most friendships are built on subtle contracts. I validate you, you validate me. I support your illusion. You support mine. You refuse to sign that contract. You would rather lose access than lose authenticity. That makes your circle smaller, but it also makes it real. You don't entertain conversations that drain you just to maintain social presence. You don't attend gatherings that require you to dilute your standards. You don't maintain connections out of guilt or fear of being alone. If someone respects you, you stay. If someone plays games, you detach. No announcement. No dramatic exit. Just reduced access. And people feel it. They feel the shift when you stop investing. They feel the cold distance when you realize the connection was conditional. And because you don't beg for acceptance, they lose leverage. You are not competing for position, not trying to dominate the social ladder, not chasing popularity metrics. You are measuring character. And if it fails the test, you withdraw. That discipline creates misunderstanding. They call you distant, difficult, hard to read. But what they really mean is this: you cannot be controlled through approval. You do not dance for attention. You do not perform to earn your place. You occupy space without asking permission, and that kind of presence does not need applause to exist. 4. You are emotionally self-sufficient. You are emotionally self-sufficient. That is a threat in a world built on dependency. Most people need constant reassurance. They need messages to feel valued. They need attention to feel secure. You don't. You can sit in a quiet room with your own thoughts and not feel abandoned. You can go hours, days without external validation and not question your worth. You don't measure your importance by how many people check on you. That independence changes the power dynamic immediately, because control often hides inside emotional need. If someone knows you fear loneliness, they can use absence as punishment. If someone knows you crave approval, they can withdraw it to make you chase. If someone knows you panic when ignored, they can silence you into submission. But you do not panic. When messages slow down, you don't spiral. When someone pulls away, you don't beg. When energy shifts, you observe instead of reacting. That calmness unsettles people. They expect emotion. They expect urgency. They expect visible attachment. Instead, they get composure. You do not overshare your vulnerabilities to create artificial intimacy. You do not cling to people just because they give you temporary attention. You do not mistake intensity for connection. You understand that emotions are powerful, but you also understand they must be governed. You feel deeply, but you don't display everything. You process internally before you respond externally. You refuse to let momentary feelings dictate permanent decisions. That discipline looks cold to the emotionally impulsive. They are used to chaos, used to dramatic reactions, used to arguments that escalate quickly. Used to tears, threats, and emotional bargaining. You do not bargain. If something feels wrong, you step back. If someone disrespects you, you reduce access. If trust breaks, you reassess quietly. No dramatic speeches, no public breakdowns, just calculated distance. And that distance feels powerful. Because emotional self-sufficiency removes leverage. No one can threaten you with withdrawal if you are already comfortable alone. No one can manipulate you with guilt if you are secure in your decisions. No one can trap you in cycles of chaos if you refuse to react impulsively. You don't need someone to complete you. You don't need constant companionship to feel whole. You don't rely on others to regulate your mood. That stability creates a silent authority. When conflict arises, you don't explode. When tension builds, you don't collapse. When accusations come, you don't rush to defend your ego. You listen, you assess. You respond only when necessary. And sometimes you don't respond at all. Silence can be more powerful than argument. People who thrive on emotional drama struggle with you. They cannot provoke you easily. They cannot bait you into overreacting. They cannot trap you in cycles of validation and rejection. You remain centered, not because you don't care, but because you refuse to let emotions control your position. You understand that attachment without self-control creates weakness, and weakness invites exploitation. So you built strength. You trained yourself to enjoy your own company, to solve your own problems, to sit with discomfort without rushing for distraction. That inner stability makes your presence different. You are not heavy with need. You are not desperate for reassurance. You are not searching for someone to rescue you from yourself. You stand alone if necessary. And because you can stand alone, any connection you choose becomes a choice, not a dependency. 5. You intimidate without trying. You intimidate without trying, not because you raise your voice, not because you demand attention, not because you walk into rooms announcing your presence. It's quieter than that. In the way you observe before you speak, in the way you hold eye contact a second longer than expected, in the way your posture does decollapse under pressure. You don't fidget for approval. You don't laugh nervously to ease tension. You don't rush to explain yourself when misunderstood. And that restraint creates pressure. People are used to reading others easily. They are used to spotting insecurity, spotting the need to impress, spotting the hunger for validation. With you, they struggle. You don't reveal your doubts openly. You don't display anxiety in obvious ways. You don't overshare your weaknesses to appear relatable. You reveal only what is necessary. That mystery unsettles them, because what cannot be read cannot be predicted, and what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. Your calm in confrontation is what truly intimidates. When someone raises their voice, you lower yours. When someone tries to dominate the conversation, you slow it down. When someone attempts to embarrass you publicly, you respond without visible emotion. That contrast exposes them. Their aggression looks desperate next to your composure. Their insecurity becomes louder against your stillness. Their need for control becomes obvious when you refuse to fight for it. You don't chase dominance, but you don't surrender it either. You stand firm without theatrics. When criticized unfairly, you don't crumble. When praised excessively, you don't inflate. When ignored intentionally, you don't react impulsively. You remain consistent. Consistency is intimidating because it signals internal stability. Most people shift depending on who they are around. They become louder near confidence, smaller near authority, sharper near competition. You remain the same. That steadiness creates silent hierarchy. You don't need to declare yourself powerful. Power is felt. It is felt when you walk away from disrespect without arguing. It's felt when you decline invitations that compromise your standards. It's felt when you refuse to explain boundaries more than once. Your presence alone can shift the energy of a room. Conversations become slightly more careful. Jokes become slightly more measured. People think twice before attempting subtle manipulation because they sense awareness, they sense strength. And strength, when quiet, is far more intimidating than noise. You don't seek to dominate others, but you dominate yourself, your emotions, your reactions, your impulses. And self-mastery radiates. It shows in how you handle silence, in how you handle rejection, in how you handle praise. You are not easily shaken. That makes insecure people uncomfortable. They prefer targets who react strongly, who reveal wounds quickly, who can be pushed and pulled with emotional triggers. You do not move easily. And when someone tries to test you, they often end up revealing more about themselves than about you. You don't threaten. You don't boast. You don't intimidate deliberately, yet people feel it. A quiet pressure, a silent warning, a sense that beneath your calm exterior is someone who cannot be manipulated, cannot be cornered, cannot be owned.